In August of 1966, a boy was flying a kite on a hill above the city. The wind took it down into the long grass on the slope, and when he went to find it, he found two men instead. They were lying side by side, dressed in neat suits, raincoats, perfectly calm, as if they'd lain down to rest. And over each man's eyes was a mask, cut and hammered out of lead. No one has ever been able to explain what they were doing up there, or what they were waiting for, or what killed them. Every name has a record. Some records were buried for a reason. This is one of them. Their names were Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana. They were electronics technicians. They fixed radios and televisions for a living in a town called Campos dos Goitacazes, a few hours north of Rio de Janeiro. By every account, they were good at it. Careful, serious men, skilled with their hands. On the 17th of August, they told their families they were traveling to buy equipment for work. They withdrew a meaningful sum of money first. By some estimates, the equivalent of thousands of dollars today. Then they left. But they didn't go where they said they were going. We can trace their real movements with unsettling precision because they left a trail of small, ordinary purchases. They took a bus to Niterói, a city across the bay from Rio. They arrived in the early afternoon. They bought 2 raincoats from a shop. They bought a bottle of water from a restaurant, and the owner later remembered them. Remembered that one of the men seemed tense, on edge, though not afraid. They paid in cash, thanked him politely, and left. And here the trail takes a strange turn. Some witnesses said the 2 men didn't climb the hill alone. They were seen getting into a jeep, accompanied by 2 other men. 2 men no one was ever able to identify, who were never found and who never came forward. The jeep carried them part way. Then Manuel and Miguel got out and walked the rest of the way up Vintem Hill on their own. 2 men in suits, carrying raincoats, on a warm, dry afternoon, heading up a steep, overgrown hill where no one had any reason to go, and 2 unidentified strangers watching them go. That was the last time anyone saw them alive. For 3 days, nothing. Their families assumed they were away on the trip. No one was looking on that hillside until the boy and his kite. The boy reported what he'd seen, but the hill fought the people trying to climb it. The terrain was so steep and so dense that it took until the following day for police and firefighters to actually reach the bodies. And when they did, the scene made no sense. The 2 men lay beside each other, on their backs, partly hidden by the brush. There was no sign of violence, no wounds, no struggle in the grass around them. Their clothes were undisturbed. Nearby were a few items, laid out with strange care. An empty water bottle, some towels, and the masks. The masks are the detail that gave the case its name, and they're worth picturing exactly. These were not goggles, not props. They were rough sheets of lead, the kind of metal used to shield against radiation, cut by hand and curved to sit over the eyes, held on with simple wire. The men had almost certainly made them themselves, which means at some point these 2 careful, rational technicians sat down and cut masks out of lead, and then climbed a hill to put them on. And then there was the note. Investigators found a small notebook with the men's belongings, and in it, a set of instructions, handwritten in plain, clumsy Portuguese. Translated, it read, roughly, 1630, be at the agreed place. 1830, swallow capsules. After the effect, protect metals, wait for the mask signal. Read that again. swallow capsules, protect metals, wait for the mass signal. It is a checklist, a schedule. These men did not wander up that hill and die by accident. They went up there on a timetable, following steps they had written down in advance, steps that ended with putting lead over their eyes and waiting for a signal. So what were they waiting for? Here's where the case splits open. In the days around their deaths, several local people reported seeing strange lights over Vintem Hill, described as a glowing oval, or a flash that lit up the slope. One person reported hearing a loud noise. And the men had a known private obsession that makes all of this worse, not better. Manuel and Miguel were deeply interested in spiritualism. This wasn't a secret, and in Brazil, in the 1960s, it wasn't especially unusual. Interest in seances, the occult, and contact with other worlds was everywhere. But theirs went further than most. They belonged to what's been described as a circle of scientific spiritualists, men who believed you could reach the spirit world or other forms of life entirely, not through prayer or trance alone, but through technology, electronics, devices they built with their own hands. They spoke of scientific seances, of reaching higher planes, of making contact, and we know they tried. A friend of the men, a third member of their circle named Elcio Gomes, told police something extraordinary. He said the group had attempted to make contact before, that they had built a device intended to communicate with spirits. Some accounts say with Mars itself, and that when they switched it on, in the backyard of one of their homes, it exploded. That wasn't the only one. Months before the deaths, in June of 1966, there was a second incident. This one at a beach called Atafona. The men reported seeing an orange oval-shaped object in the sky, throwing off bright rays of light before it exploded. And here's the part that lifts it out of pure fantasy. This wasn't only their account. Multiple witnesses reported a flying saucer over the water. The blast was reportedly felt for miles. The Brazilian Navy investigated it. So by the time these two men climbed Vintem Hill with lead over their eyes, they weren't beginners dabbling in something harmless. In their own minds, they were experienced. They had seen things. They had built machines and watched them blow apart, and walked away convinced they were close to something real. And there's one more detail, a small, cold one, that almost never gets mentioned. Years earlier, another technician had reportedly been found dead on another hill wearing a similar mask. One masked man on a hilltop is a tragedy. Two is a mystery, but a pattern. A pattern suggests that somewhere, someone was teaching these men what to do. And why? Suddenly the pieces rearrange themselves into something deliberate. The withdrawn money, the secret destination, the raincoats, the capsules in the note, the mask to protect the eyes, the agreed time, the waiting. This starts to look less like a murder and more like a ceremony, a planned attempt to make contact with something they believed was coming. And the calm, careful posture of the bodies fits that reading exactly. The men appear to have lain down willingly, no distress, no attempt to flee, as though they were waiting for something they fully expected to arrive. But belief doesn't stop a body from dying, so the question becomes the one the police actually had to answer. What killed them? And this is the part of the case that should make you angry. The autopsy was a disaster. The men's internal organs needed to be tested for toxicology, to check for exactly the kind of capsules the note described. But weeks passed before the autopsy was done. The coroner's office was overwhelmed. The bodies had been decomposing the whole time, and by the time anyone examined the organs, they were too badly deteriorated for reliable testing. So the toxicology, the single test that could have told us whether these men poisoned themselves, was never meaningfully carried out. The most important physical evidence in the entire case was simply lost to time and delay. So the official cause of death is, to this day, unknown. Not natural, not murder, not suicide. Unknown. The one question that might have been answerable was lost on a shelf in a coroner's office. That single failure is why this case can never be closed, because every theory that's left is now permanently impossible to disprove. And it didn't stay a local story. The Aled mass case exploded across Brazil. Front pages, competing theories, police chasing the spiritualists, the radiation angle, the possibility of a fourth and fifth man who were never found. It drew in believers and skeptics, journalists and investigators, each certain they'd cracked it, none of them agreeing. Years later, it even drew the attention of one of the most famous UFO researchers in the world, the Frenchman Jacques Vallée, who traveled to the Hill himself and cataloged the case as a possible contact event. Decades of attention, and not one person in all that time has produced an answer that holds. So now I want to know what you think. Was this a ritual that went wrong? Two men who took something and waited for a signal that never came? Was it murder, dressed up to look like something stranger? Or was it something we still don't have a name for? Tell me in the comments. I read them. So here's what we're left with. Two intelligent, capable men, a withdrawn fortune, a lie to their families about where they were going, a hidden trip to a hill known for strange lights, hand-built lead mass, and a written schedule that ended with swallowing capsules and waiting for a signal, and 4 broad explanations, none of which can be proven, that they took something deliberately, a planned ritual or experiment that killed them, exactly as the note seems to lay out, that they were poisoned by someone else, the money gone, the trip secret, a deal that went wrong on a quiet hillside, that something happened up there that we have no framework for at all, the explanation the witnesses with their lights in the sky have always preferred, or something more mundane that simply lined up into a pattern that looks like design. The trouble is, the ruined autopsy means we can't rule any of them out. What we know for certain is very small. 2 men climbed a hill in their good suits. They put lead over their eyes, and they lay down to wait for something. Whatever it was, it came for them, and it left the rest of us with nothing but the note. We don't know who wrote the signal they were waiting for. We don't know if it ever came. And because of a few spoiled samples in 1966, we will almost certainly never know what they swallowed on that hill, or why 2 careful men were so sure that lead would protect them from whatever they expected to see. That's where the record ends. But it's not the only one. If you want to be here when the next one opens, subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll know the moment it does. A new account goes up every week. And if this case got under your skin, leave a like. It's a small thing, but it's how these stories reach the next person who can't let them go. I'll see you at the next account.